Hey everybody, welcome back for another ASOTU Edge webinar. Today we're joined by our friends at vAuto. We're going to be talking about rules of the road, when, why, and how to move vehicles between stores with vAuto. Joining us will be Patrick Janes, Associate Vice President at vAuto, and Paul Golias, Corporate Used Vehicle Director at Modern Auto Group. Enjoy.
Kyle, did you know that I have been banned in my family from playing certain board games?
That pencils for me.
People don't think this about me because like I just always have like, you know, a very welcoming demeanor. But when it gets to board game mode, like even with, you know, it doesn't matter how young the kids are. Kids need to know how the world works. I do like this little, I'm pretty competitive in general.
I agree. Kids need to know how the world works.
Right.
So I support your decisions. Which ones are you banned from?
For sure. I'm on the verge of getting banned from Uno, but Monopoly, 100% I am banned from, because I go cutthroat on Monopoly, like, you know, because I always know I can get my youngest daughter to align with me and we consolidate. Right? Like there's strategic mergers going on and I can convince her to like join me. And you know, but with Monopoly, I always do it because she for some reason she tends to get like the right spots to put houses on.
Like early.
Which is like the biggest crapshoot of Monopoly, right? Like where do I put the houses?
Where do you spend the money first? Where do you move stuff around so that when people land, they're on the right spot?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's there's so many similarities to that and today's topic of moving your vehicles around in between stores. Where's the customer going to show up? Where does the car need to be? It kind of feels like it's never where it needs to be if you have multiple locations and are shuffling around. But fortunately today, we have some people that can help us figure that out.
Yes, I love this conversation because it's what the big box retailers are doing, and more dealers, especially dealer groups with consolidation, are starting to think about it. And I'm excited to have Patrick Janes and Paul Golias with us. Let's go ahead and bring them on because they're the experts here today. They're going to bring us some insights into actually what's happening on the ground. I'd love to start with Paul. Paul, welcome to the show. Let's get a little bit of insight into like what your background in the car business is. Give us the high level overview and what your current role is with Modern Automotive.
Sure. Well, I began my automotive career in 1989, writing service. In 93, transition to sales, progressing through all variable positions, including GM. In 2013, I followed my passion for used cars, and I've been the director of used vehicle sales for platforms or large dealer groups since then. You know, I enjoy helping our stores with all aspects of used sales, from proper desking, appraising, acquisition, disposal, reconditioning decisions, merchandising, and inventory management.
Can you give us a little flyover of Modern Auto Group?
Yeah. All of our stores are in North Carolina. Fantastic group to work for, privately owned. We own 16 stores. We own stores in Boone, North Carolina, Asheboro, Burlington, Winston-Salem, Lake Norman, and Concord. And Hickory, Nissan store also in Hickory. So it's just it's throughout the state. It's nice being able to travel just in one state, but it's a great group to work for, and just a whole good bunch of people.
Give us an idea, for those not familiar with the geography, about how far are the stores? Like, what's the furthest throw from one store, you know, the furthest two stores?
Well, we're based, you know, in Winston-Salem. You know, and our furthest store away is probably when you get down to Concord, maybe an hour and 20 minutes. You know, they're an hour and 20, hour and 15 south. You got Boone, which is an hour and 20 west. You got Burlington, which is about an hour to the east.
Okay.
So they're all drivable pretty easily.
Very good. I mean, so go ahead, Kyle.
I'd love to hear, you know, we're obviously talking about, and I'd love, Patrick, for you to maybe set this up just a little bit. Patrick, with vAuto and Cox Automotive, I'd love to hear kind of the backstory on some of the thinking that vAuto has put in around what it looks like to operate at an enterprise level, and how kind of this conversation is coming of age when we look across the data of auto that Cox has the access to, and then how that's being pushed down into these dealer groups on how to leverage, you know, scale and the 16 rooftops. What's the background on that?
Well, if you look at the background of vAuto as an inventory management solution, we're very rooftop centric. Like that's came to the market, dealer by dealer by dealer. We went out and, we have 14,000 rooftops on our inventory management system now. But for many years, it was kind of that each store stood on its own. You had a general manager and you were focused on, the day-to-day operations, and we provide you insights to really, compete against anybody around you in order to kind of optimize the return on investment on a car. But we have seen this consolidation happening in the market for years now. And I think a lot of folks might have reacted to it and said, well, we've got to cater to these huge mega groups, right? That those are the ones that are really thinking outside of the box and thinking about moving inventory and optimizing it throughout the entire country. But really what we heard from our clients that started out as, 1 or 2 or 3 stores, and now like Modern, we're 17 or 18 or 20 stores. That seems to be kind of the sweet spot for being able to move some cars around with some smaller geographies where the transportation expenses aren't as significant, but yet each market's a little bit different. Paul talked about, Concord to Winston-Salem. I'm sure Paul can tell us the differences and the nuances about the used car markets just moving that far, an hour and 20 minutes. So when we started to understand that, we partnered with several clients to say, how can technology make you be a little more efficient at that process and get the cars to the right place? And we saw folks stepping up like Paul in these roles where they were looking over the entire group and trying to make sure that that was all being optimized. So that's what we've been working on, leaning into probably over the last 1.5 to 2 years, is helping these medium-sized groups really benefit from some of this scaling that we think is right at hand.
Paul, when did you kind of start to see the writing on the wall that inventory was more than just location specific, where a single location needed to flip a car, and you could start to look at it on a little bit more of a macro level? When was that kind of aha moment, and how did you approach like the thought process on how you were going to do that at a group level?
That's a good question. That all probably started, I would say, probably 2018 for me. When you really started to realize that some vehicles are just going to do better elsewhere, and to look into those early, and to try to make those moves when you could. So I would say probably 2018 is when we really started looking at it a little bit harder.
So let's take it. I like to take things to first principles. When you think about a strategy for when is the right time to move a car, or how do you approach it? What are the fundamental principles that you start your decision-making process on?
Well, it's a good question. And I don't think there's one best answer for everyone, because different groups do have different business models. Our group still runs off of a very entrepreneurial spirit. Our group works really, really well together, and we share inventory between each other willingly. We all communicate well as a team. When a unit is traded that just doesn't fit the store, we all seem to know it. And from there, they reach out to me to place it. Many times the stores will reach out for me to help with an HQ appraisal when they're trying to trade it beforehand, because they know they don't want the unit if traded. And I think we all want the vehicle at the right store from day one. And we do a good job with that via the teamwork. Our stores are not forced to move a vehicle. As vehicles age and they've been out there for a while, there will be conversations about moving one elsewhere. Sometimes when a unit is hanging around too long, salespeople simply get tired of seeing it. It needs a fresh eyes somewhere else before any further retail reduction in price. But whatever a group's policy is, this new enterprise transfer page can be utilized really well to help with database decisions.
Can you? There are a couple of questions that sprung up from that. What I heard you say is a conversation that we've had quite a bit around used cars is there seems to be a lot of focus on who's the best end user for the vehicle from the moment it gets traded in. It sounds like your store managers have already this idea of like conversation. If it's not the best end user isn't likely here, how can I get it traded internally first?
Exactly. And we look at that really hard. I don't have very many hard and fast rules with the group, but nothing leaves the group without it going through me. Because we do have, we've got other stores. So just because a store trades for a car, if they don't need it, somebody else in the group probably will. If we determine that nobody else in the group needs the car too, at that point, we'll let it loose.
So before it goes to auction or goes to sell on the
Correct.
exterior, right?
Correct.
Rather retail than wholesale that car.
Yeah. Exactly. If nobody in the group wants the car, I'm fine with it. It can leave the group. But before it leaves one store to another, leaves the group entirely, we give the other stores an opportunity to take a look, or I'll take a look first actually and find out what store can use that car based upon the data, their needs, what they're selling.
Paul, is CPO a strategy here where, because you have, I don't know, it sounds like 7, 8, 9 brands, you start to have the opportunity to find a placement in a CPO brand where you might be able to put a bit more money in a car just because of the, because of the retail, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. We've got several Nissan stores, 3 Toyota stores. And if our Nissan store takes in a Toyota that could be certified or vice versa, we always get involved with the other stores. And we just all understand that those cars are going to bring more at those stores. And they do. The data shows it.
What's your online? Do you share inventory online?
We do.
We do.
So every store you can see any inventory, doesn't really matter. Right?
It doesn't really matter. And, this is a group that is just fantastic with everybody playing well together. Nobody likes to give up their car to another store. They never have, but here we don't have an issue with it. Sometimes they don't like it, but they do it, and they know that they have one coming back to them whenever they need it.
I think that's just speaks. Now we're just talking about the reason culture. That can exist is because leadership and culture are in place. And like, that's something that you can't build overnight. That's something where everyone just has to like build a high level of trust. Like the only thing that gets you over the pain is, like you said, nobody likes it. The pain of like sending a car to another store is the fact that you, like you just said, like you trust that when the time is right, it truly is like a whole team rowing together and not just one person trying to like beat everybody else. Although it's still competitive, I'm sure.
It's very competitive, but at the end of the day, they realize that the cars belong to Modern. They don't belong to the individual store. So it works well for us.
Guys, I gotta throw a comment in here. It's an old car dog. It's an old car dog line here, but you hit on something, Paul Daly, when you said, hey, you guys share your cars online, right? So why would you need to move them around, right? Because every consumer can see all these cars online and they can just go where they want, where the car is, et cetera. But do you remember the day when we always used to survey customers and say, what was the number one thing that was that made you come to our dealership to see the car? And you'd think they would say, oh, it was the newspaper ad or it was the online. And they always used to say drive by.
Right.
Remember that? We could figure out, are you kidding me? Drive by. Are you all the
Still
things,
works.
Money we're spending, and it's drive by. So as much as I think some groups want to sit there and say, hey, why are you going through all this brain damage of moving cars around to these stores? There is something to be said about a car being in the right store for that drive by.
Especially when you talk about like, a lot of people don't land on a car they didn't come in on, right? And so you think about having the things there that are the most relevant. We'll go dig it up after this, but Kyle and I do a lot of these man on the street interviews where we'll just randomly approach someone, ask them some questions about the last car they bought. And last year at our big event, ASOTU, we were in the mall across from the venue, and we found, the gentleman was probably in his mid 60s, and he was walking in the morning, like the mall wasn't open yet. So we're literally walking, and he was walking really fast. I was out of breath. And we're following around and we're asking him about his last car purchase. He went online to find like what he thought he wanted. He then drove 30 minutes to the dealership to see it on the lot before they were open, made sure that the lot was in good shape, that the vehicles, he said, basically it said a lot to me about the type of dealer it was, the condition the lot was in. And that blew our minds. We're like, wait, he didn't submit a lead. He didn't do anything. He actually drove to the lot first. And like, just to prove your point, like it still matters where the car is and how it's being merchandised on the lot.
So I was at that conference, and that guy had a killer pair of New Balance on, as I remember, when he was walking the mall.
Killer pair of New Balance.
Did you guys live video that then? I remember that interview.
Oh, I was so breathing heavy after that interview because he did not like you know, he's former military. He's like, I'm on a walk. You can join me if you want, but I'm walking, and like he was just borderline running.
Paul, what other like processes is that? Are there things that you do to make sure that the maybe the company that got that car originally, the individual franchise or retail dealership that got that car originally is kind of like honored for their trade-in or their time on that car or things like that from a financial or is it just like, hey, this is going to happen enough, it'll always come around? Because you know, different groups are handling that differently. How are you handling that?
As far as moving a car like on day one or something like that?
Yeah.
In our group, it's already predetermined, you know, because they've gotten me involved on that, you know, and if the stores also know this, I'm a big fan of moving the car for the right money, period. There's no such thing as taking in a car too cheap. And if they do take in one too cheap, if it's got to go to another store and it's worth more money and they want to move it to another store, I'm going to give them all the money for the car because that's what it's worth.
Right.
So again, most of our moves that we do initially from day one, I'm already involved in before the car even comes in inventory. You know, on the cars that have already been in inventory, you know, there's a lot of different ways that you could look at those. And we follow heavily market day supply pricing. So, you know, we'll look at how the car is going to perform based on market day supply, like my market day supply in other stores. Find the store it's going to fit the best, you know, based on a lot of different things. The store's DSI levels, the brand, market day supply, potential profit, the ability to certify it, you know, et cetera. And we'll look at what that car should retail for. We'll back out a reasonable profit. We'll know what's front line ready, and we'll move it for that money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I actually remember back in the day when I started in the car business, we had at two of the first dealerships that I worked at, we had like our best buyers, like the wholesale guys, and they would, on like days that they knew we were always busy, they just hang around the store. And it was great for us too, because it was like, oh, if I need to really put the money in this car, right? Or I don't know about this car, like that buyer is going to be close by. I can pull him in the used car manager's office and we can get a buy bid on that car really quick. It's almost like you're like the internal best buyer that's possible for that group. It's like, hey, if I really need that bid, or if I really need to know if this car needs to move, or I need to know that I think that this car could be better someone else, I've got that like internal buyer kind of in my pocket. That's a huge thing when you're trying to put a deal together, when you're just close on the trade, and it's like, hey, I might not be able to hit the number on this trade, but I know the Nissan store down the road might be able to. That's a massive unlock, I feel like, that a lot of people aren't talking about.
Well, it's true, you know, and just like that, my phone will ring off the hook sometimes. And I'll never forget when I first got promoted to a regional used vehicle manager position for a large dealer group. My boss looked at me and he picked up his phone. He says, Paul, you see this? This is the most important thing you can use. He said, if this rings, you answer it. He says, you're going to have a lot of smart people calling you. And if they're calling you, it's because they need your help. They're not calling you to ask you how your puppy is. And it's really true. I mean, when they call me for a car, a lot of times it's like, wow, okay, I might have to make some phone calls on this too. But you know what? That's what I do. That's what I'm here for. They need to get back to retail. I'll help you out. I'll go ahead and find out the most we can do for this car, get the most for you, and I'll call you back. And we do right away. You know, it can't wait. It's got to be done now. And anybody that's in a position that I do, that I have has got to do that. That's the most important part of this job, is being there to support your stores when they call you and they need help with all the money to put a deal together.
I love that.
Yeah. Patrick, one question that I had is obviously you mentioned early on, like vAuto and all the IMS is really at the onset of IMS is really coming into the forefront. We're centered around the rooftop because that's always how we've operated. What has technology done to advance the ease of transfer, right? Because there's always that worry of like, oh my goodness, but the descriptions and the photos and the accounting and the paperwork and what has been, what's the easy button now from like a transfer capability, and what has technology provided that we maybe didn't have 3 or 4 years ago that could make this easier for a group that's interested?
Yeah, so what we've tried to focus on is we want to support guys like Paul, right? We think they're critical roles inside the dealership to really, optimize the inventory. And I applaud Modern for having that role in place, because I think whether he's doing a HQ or headquarters appraisal on a car that might be at the wrong store, or whether he's looking at existing inventory and trying to transfer that, what our goal was is we knew we need to have everything in one place. Bring it all on one platform, one place where he can see every car for all the stores. And then I'll plug a product that we've had around for years called Stockwave, which many folks are familiar with. And it was an auction buying platform. And what everybody loved about Stockwave was it aggregated all the auctions across the country, and then it had a series of filters, much more robust than an auction filter like year, make, model, and CR score, but went a whole lot deeper strategically on how to find the cars you really want. In other words, you were looking for cars, not for auctions. And we tried to take that same concept and bring that into this transfer platform. So you're looking across all the stores in your group, and then you have a series of filters that allow you to go in and look for cars that might be in the wrong place. You mentioned it earlier with CPO. Look for stuff that's off-brand in the wrong store. Should I be thinking about moving that to the on-brand store? Is it CPO eligible, et cetera? And some of that's just really low-hanging fruit. And you would think that groups would be evaluating that on a regular basis. But if it's all rooftop-centric and you're not logging into every different IMS every day, right, and Paul's, chasing around and answering phone calls, he can't see the whole picture, right? So we knew that we needed to bring that together so an operator like Paul could be a lot more efficient and a whole lot more effective and have meaningful conversations, with the various stores. And the cool thing we build in, and one of the guys on my team is brilliant with this, and I would have never thought of this on my own, so I can't take credit for it. But he put together this list, like a transfer list, because you have this concern, right? When you're running autonomously and you have GMs that kind of have their own turf, because believe me, a lot of these stores are still rooftop centric and they are run based on, financial statements that are rooftop centric. He created this kind of transfer pending list where you give a guy a chance to see what's going to leave his inventory before the end of the month. And you can see that maybe for 4 or 5, 6, 7 days as he's closing out the month.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of a sudden he can go, I know these are going. I got to work really hard to retail my way out of them. So at least they have a day in court, right, to be able to compensate.
I like the way you put it that way. Yeah. Paul, what's the group size? I mean, what's the used car inventory size for the entire group collectively?
We keep about 800 cars in inventory.
And how often are you moving cars?
Daily.
How many? Like, give us an idea for a group that size. And now we know the geography of it. About how many vehicles you move in a day?
I would say we probably move somewhere in the neighborhood around probably 5 or 6 a day.
Okay, so there's a lot of motion going on.
There was
1 to 200 a month. Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing is, we have 16 stores, but many of them are the same franchise. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, obviously, with as many Nissan stores that we have, there's not as much movement between those stores. But for the different brands that we have, there is a lot of movement.
Are you using? Obviously, you're using vAuto tools. Are you using any other tech that that you've kind of been leaning into? Because a lot of people are talking about AI, they're talking about ChatGPT, and so we always ask the question now because people dabble at different. It's all the Wild West right now. So we basically want you to give us all your secrets.
we really don't. I mean, we rely heavily on vAuto. From the used car standpoint, no, we're really not utilizing the AI.
All right. Well, do you use it any of it in your personal life?
No.
Besides making funny videos with Patrick,
he's like, let me remind you about that cell phone that I
funny goofy videos, but no, I don't make any. So
he said, let me remind you about that cell phone that I constantly have to pick up from my used car managers.
Yes,
that's the whole day. Well, Paul, Patrick, you have been amazing today. I really appreciate the insights, and I think just like anyone that's thinking about this can take some of these tools and tips and just the energy around it, like it's necessary and possible. And you've given us that insight though. So thanks for joining us today on this Edge webinar.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone, that is a wrap. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We hope you learned something. If you missed it or you want to share it with a friend, go ahead and hop on over to ASOTU.com, click on media, and drop down to webinars. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.